Officer 21. I need EMS at my location. Major accident. I've got one male. Looks young, unresponsive, not breathing.
Copy that. EMS en route. Any other injuries?
On April 14, 2023, around 2:50 a.m., a silver 2007 Ford Fusion was found crashed against a tree on a two-lane road near Ladson, South Carolina. The only occupant, 17-year-old Terrell Freeman, was dead in the driver's seat. The car had left the roadway, struck a tree on the passenger side, and came to a full stop in a shallow ditch. There were no witnesses and no surveillance coverage in the area. The crash was written off as a high-speed loss of control. A responding patrol labeled it accidental. No signs of foul play were listed, and the file was closed within 48 hours. No criminal case was opened. The body was released to the family. The vehicle was towed to a municipal lot and marked for insurance processing. Toxicology screening later showed no traces of alcohol or controlled substances. 3 days later, Leon Freeman, 45, was allowed access to the wreck before it was scrapped. Leon had been an auto mechanic for over 2 decades. He ran a small repair shop in North Charleston and had taught his son how to drive and maintain cars. He didn't believe the crash was just an accident. When Leon examined the car, the first thing he noticed was the pattern of damage. The point of impact was not the front bumper or center hood. The deformation was centered on the passenger side A-pillar, the structural post between the windshield and door. That contradicted the explanation of a direct frontal collision. If the driver had lost control at speed, the car should have hit head-on. The airbags confirmed his suspicion. The passenger side airbag had deployed. The driver's side had not. Leon opened the compartment and saw no clear sign of activation. The dash around the unit was intact. If Terrell had hit the tree directly, both airbags should have deployed. Leon moved to the rear of the vehicle. The back windshield had been blown outward. Most of the glass was found outside the car, not inside. That was inconsistent with a forward collision. Rear glass usually stays intact unless force comes from inside the vehicle, or from the rear seat area. Inside the cabin, he found muddy boot prints on the front passenger floor mat. The prints were large, and the pattern was from a heavy work boot. Terrell wore size 9 athletic shoes. These prints were significantly larger. The floor mat itself had been shoved forward several inches, as if someone had braced against it. Looking under the passenger seat, Leon noticed a scorched metal object partially fused to the carpet. He removed it with pliers. It was warped from heat, but still had an engraved marking, SD-4281. The shape resembled part of a badge. The number was partially legible. It was not listed in the police report, and no officer mentioned it during the handoff. Leon placed it in a zip bag and labeled it. He took photographs of everything: the damage, the airbag units, the windshield pattern, the boot prints, the scorched item. He didn't have forensic tools, but he had years of experience with mechanical failures and collisions. To him, this was not consistent with a one-driver crash. He reviewed the autopsy summary. There were bruises across Terrell's shoulders, abrasions on both wrists, and shallow marks on the lower neck. None of these were classified as causes of death, but they raised questions. The report said the seatbelt had not been in use. Without a belt, shoulder bruising would be unlikely. Wrists don't bruise from steering wheel impact. There were no signs of internal bleeding or extended pressure, but the marks remained unexplained. Leon went back to his garage and gathered what he had. He printed photographs at a pharmacy kiosk and made copies of the autopsy summary and accident report. He used his shop's copier and stored the documents in a clear folder. He took notes in the same spiral notebook where he usually logged engine work. Everything was kept in a locked metal drawer at the garage. He wasn't sure what he was looking at yet, but he no longer trusted the official version. The more he studied the case, the more it looked like something had happened before the crash. Something that left his son in the driver's seat of a car already set up to crash. He didn't go to the police again. He didn't call an attorney. Instead, he wrote one sentence at the top of a blank page. Through a former client who had done routine maintenance for the Charleston Police Department's vehicle division, Leon was able to ask a few informal questions. The badge number was traced back to Kevin Doyle, an officer who had served in the North Charleston precinct. Leon requested more details. Doyle had left the department 12 days before Terrell's crash. The separation had been classified as a voluntary resignation due to non-specific medical concerns. That language immediately raised questions. It didn't match the phrasing typically used for physical injury or retirement. Leon made efforts to access the actual resignation document. A contact from city payroll forwarded him a scanned copy. The document included a signature from the watch commander, but Leon cross-referenced the supervisor's schedule and discovered that he had been on approved leave during that time. The date on the form didn't align with the supervisor's presence in the building. Attached to the resignation was a physician's clearance, purportedly from a local outpatient clinic. Leon searched the clinic's license number and discovered it had been suspended 6 months prior for administrative noncompliance. There was no attending physician listed on the document. A fax header indicated the form had been submitted from an untraceable number with no caller ID or registered return line. Leon looked into whether Doyle had maintained any access to city property after leaving the department. A former customer from the city's IT department provided access to a hard-copy logbook used for issuing keys to patrol vehicles. It was an analog ledger still used for overnight shifts and special assignments. Each entry recorded the unit number, the assigned officer, time of pickup, and time of return. The logs showed that patrol car Unit 214, which had been assigned to Doyle prior to his resignation, was checked out at 0032 on April 14th, the same night as Terrell's fatal crash, and returned at 0307. Doyle's name was handwritten in the Issued To field. However, his name did not appear on the official shift roster for that night. According to staffing records, he was not on duty, nor was he authorized to check out a vehicle. The signature appeared distorted compared to previous entries, and the ink was darker than others on the page, suggesting it was written with a different pen. Security systems for the motor pool were reportedly down that night for routine servicing. There were no logs from badge swipes or surveillance backups. Up to that point, Leon had not established any personal connection between Doyle and his son. That changed when he began reviewing the contents of Terrell's phone, which had been returned by the coroner's office, along with a sealed bag of personal items. Most of the files were typical: music, saved videos, school messages. But in the messaging app archive, Leon found a folder of chats with a contact saved as B. The messages were intermittent, often sent late at night. They contained private conversations, mentions of needing to keep things quiet, and references to meeting without being seen. One message read, "He can't know. If he finds out, it's over for both of us." Another included a blurry selfie of Terrell and a girl in a parked car, time-stamped 3 weeks before the crash. Leon took a screenshot of the image and ran a basic reverse search. It yielded a name: Brianna Doyle, 17 years old, student at Garrett Tech High School in North Charleston, daughter of Officer Kevin Doyle. The pieces began to shift into place. He tried contacting her through social media, but her accounts were either private or inactive. Facebook showed no updates in over a year. Instagram was locked. School records were inaccessible. Leon left a note at the school office asking if she would speak with him, but he received no response. Days passed, then weeks. 2 weeks after his final attempt, he found an unmarked envelope inside his home mailbox. There was no stamp, no sender, no handwriting on the outside. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, folded twice. One sentence was written in ballpoint pen. "You're right. He did it. I heard him." There was no signature. No further contact followed. But to Leon, the direction was clear. He now believed that Terrell had been in direct contact with Doyle's daughter, that their relationship had been concealed, and that Doyle had discovered it shortly before the crash. On a Sunday afternoon in early May, Leon Freeman met Brianna Doyle in a nearly empty parking lot behind the Westview Branch Library in North Charleston. It was the first time they had seen each other in person. She approached alone, without speaking, and handed him a small USB flash drive. Leon asked if she wanted to talk, but she shook her head, turned around, and walked away without another word. Back at his garage, Leon plugged the flash drive into an old laptop he used for diagnostic software. It contained a single audio file. The file name had no date or label. The audio was recorded indoors, possibly inside a house or apartment. The quality was inconsistent. There was background hum, interference, and moments where the voices dipped below clarity. But the main segment was audible. A man's voice dominated the recording. He was angry, shouting, "You think I'm gonna let him take you? I'll bury him. He'll be begging not to be found. Say goodbye to that little punk." A metallic clicking sound followed. Leon replayed the segment multiple times. The noise was consistent with the chambering of a round in a semi-automatic firearm. After the click, there was silence, followed by muffled movement. A woman could be heard crying softly, but she said nothing. No names were mentioned in the audio, but the tone and content aligned with what Brianna had previously implied. Leon messaged her the next day. She responded within hours. In written form, her statements were clearer. She explained that her father had discovered her relationship with Terrell months earlier and had become obsessively controlling. She said Kevin Doyle began checking her phone messages and social media, tracking her location and limiting who she could see. According to her, he issued verbal threats, both to her and to Terrell, and warned that if the relationship continued, there would be consequences. She claimed that on the night of April 14th, Doyle had arranged to meet Terrell under the pretense of talking things out. Instead, she said, he picked him up in a patrol car, drove him outside city limits, and forced him into the driver's seat. He reportedly struck Terrell, made verbal threats, and displayed his service weapon. She said Terrell was confused, possibly concussed, and panicked behind the wheel. He wasn't driving to go anywhere, she wrote. He was driving to get away. Leon asked if she would speak to a lawyer. She refused. She said she had no intention of testifying or contacting police. She said no one would believe her because Doyle had status and authority. She believed that without clear evidence, she would be ignored or dismissed. Still, she encouraged Leon to do something with the recording. Leon forwarded the audio file to a local attorney he had met during a previous civil dispute. After reviewing the file, the attorney told Leon that its use in court would be limited. It had been recorded without consent, which violated state wiretap laws. The speaker was not identified by name, and there was no timestamp or metadata verifying when or where it had been made. It did not meet the threshold for new evidence in a closed case. With no live witnesses and no direct connection to the crash, the district attorney's office was unlikely to revisit the matter. Leon asked what legal steps remained. The attorney said the only viable option would be to file a formal request for the case to be reopened based on procedural irregularities. But without law enforcement cooperation, the chance of success was low. The case remained officially closed as a non-criminal traffic fatality. In the days that followed, Brianna continued to message Leon. The tone of her messages shifted. They became more emotional, less about justice and more about retaliation. One message read, "They'll never believe me. Not him. He's a cop." In another, she provided details about her father's habits. She described the layout of his house, mentioned the location of a handgun kept in his bedroom drawer, and claimed that he regularly drank until unconscious. Her messages suggested she had considered taking action herself, but felt powerless. She wrote, "You're his father. You can do what I can't. I would have done it already, if I could." Leon did not respond. He read the messages, saved them, but didn't reply. She messaged again 3 days later, repeating the same theme. "You said you lost everything. He still has everything. Take it back." There was no direct suggestion, no plan outlined. But the implication of what she wanted Leon to do was becoming clearer with each message. Leon printed out the chat logs. He added them to the growing folder of documents he had compiled since the accident. The folder now included photographs of the car damage, notes from the vehicle logbooks, printouts of Terrell's messages, the badge fragment, and now the transcript of the audio file. He did not speak to anyone about the contents. No authorities were notified, and Brianna Doyle's messages didn't stop. On the morning of June 5, 2023, officers from the Charleston Police Department responded to a welfare check at 1426 Eaton Street, a two-bedroom single-family home in North Charleston, South Carolina. The request came from a neighbor who reported abnormal quiet from the property. The lights had remained off the previous evening, the mailbox was full, and the household dog, which typically barked at any activity near the house, had not made a sound in over 24 hours. At approximately 9:25 a.m., officers entered the residence through the front door, after receiving no response to knocks or phone calls. Inside, They found the body of Kevin Doyle, 49, a recently retired police officer. He was lying face down in the living room. A single gunshot wound was located at the back of his head. There were no signs of forced entry. No struggle was evident. Nothing in the home appeared disturbed or missing. A .40 caliber shell casing was recovered approximately 2 feet from the body. The weapon itself was not found at the scene. The medical examiner later confirmed the wound was consistent with close-range discharge, likely from behind and above the victim. Time of death was estimated between midnight and 2 a.m. A partial footprint was identified on the beige carpet near the entryway. Forensic analysis later matched the tread pattern to a model of work boots commonly used in industrial trades, specifically the Dunlow 870 series, a brand owned and worn by Leon Freeman. One boot from this pair had been photographed by investigators during an earlier inquiry related to the vehicle crash. Both boots were recovered during a search of Leon's garage on June 5. Latent prints were lifted from the doorknob and the interior hallway light switch. A fingerprint from the outer door lock was conclusively matched to Leon Freeman through AFIS records. The interior prints were smudged and unreadable. Doyle's home surveillance system, 4 cameras mounted on the front porch, garage, and rear patio, was disabled. The wiring had not been cut or tampered with. The technician who installed the system in 2019 confirmed that the owner had requested a full deactivation 1 week earlier, citing personal privacy concerns. The service request was documented and processed. A search warrant was issued for Freeman's residence and his workplace, a private auto shop on Rosser Avenue. Investigators seized a number of physical and digital materials during the search. Printed copies of the original accident report involving Terrell Freeman, close-up photographs of the police badge fragment found in Terrell's vehicle, a hand-drawn sketch of Doyle's home interior, annotated with doorways, camera locations, and sleeping areas, a typed page titled Statement with the line, "No one came for my son, I did." Report from an independent investigative research group uncovered archived digital correspondence linked to Brianna Doyle. The contents had been stored in a discontinued cloud storage account registered to her college email address. Access was obtained using metadata tied to her university records. The archive included unsent messages, saved drafts, and encrypted notes dated weeks before and after the death of her father, Kevin Doyle. While none of the texts constituted direct incitement or explicit instructions, several entries suggested psychological and emotional pressure placed on Leon Freeman in the months leading up to the killing. One message read, "You're not a killer. You're justice." Another, from June 2nd, "He'll never be convicted. He'll never even be charged. That kind of man doesn't get punished." A third note stated, "If it were me, they'd bury me in handcuffs. But you're a father. You're the one they'll listen to. You can do what I can't." The correspondence had been saved using encrypted third-party applications rather than traditional messaging platforms. The authorship of the messages was attributed to Brianna based on metadata, device ID correlation, and timestamps consistent with her known activity patterns. However, no handwriting or biometric confirmation was conducted. In the same report, it was confirmed that 3 days before Kevin Doyle was found dead, Brianna Doyle initiated a legal claim for a life insurance policy valued at $470,000. The policy had been issued through a law enforcement benefits association and listed Brianna as the sole beneficiary. The paperwork was filed in person at the offices of Hensley and Parrish LLP, a legal firm that had previously handled estate matters for the Doyle family. Within 5 weeks of Kevin Doyle's death, the claim was approved and funds were disbursed in full. According to internal documentation from the insurance provider, there were no legal challenges to the claim. In parallel, records from a mandatory university counseling session held the week prior to the homicide documented a conversation between Brianna and a social worker. During the meeting, she reportedly said, "It'll all be over soon. Somebody's finally going to do what's right." The social worker later submitted this recollection in an internal report after the homicide became public. After the release of the report, journalists and legal researchers attempted to contact Brianna Doyle. All inquiries went unanswered. She remained enrolled in university but withdrew from all in-person classes and switched to remote learning. Her last known public appearance was at a grocery store near campus 2 weeks after the verdict. Leon Freeman, 48, was taken into custody at 11:10 p.m. that same day. He did not resist arrest. At the station, he was booked and interviewed under standard homicide protocol. During questioning, Freeman invoked his right to remain silent. No statement was given. His appointed legal counsel issued a preliminary motion to suppress certain items of evidence on procedural grounds, including the statement document, claiming it was improperly contextualized and written without intent of confession. The defense's overarching strategy focused on systemic negligence and prolonged emotional distress. The position was that Freeman had exhausted all legal options and was denied justice at every turn. The prosecution presented a contrasting narrative. According to the lead investigator, Detective Harris Colton, the combination of physical evidence, the footprint, fingerprint, shell casing, and premeditative materials, established motive, means, and opportunity. The previously inadmissible audio file, submitted by Freeman weeks earlier, was excluded from the trial due to violation of state recording laws. Brianna Doyle was issued a court subpoena as a potential witness. She failed to appear. Investigators were unable to locate her at her registered address, and phone records showed her number was deactivated 2 days prior to the hearing. No charges were filed against her, and no warrant was issued. Authorities stated that there was insufficient cause to pursue further action regarding her involvement. On October 19, 2023, following a 2-week trial and 5 hours of jury deliberation, Leon Freeman was found guilty of first-degree murder. The court rejected the defense's argument of diminished responsibility. He was sentenced to 23 years in state prison, without the possibility of parole during the first 18 years of incarceration.